speaking about parenting adults and parenting in adulthood. I mean, as far as you, I think today children are becoming young adults at 16 and 17. And then, of course, there's young adulthood, middle adulthood. As I often say, you never stop needing your parents. It's an earth-shattering experience. The Earth's axis goes whoosh in just like 1 minute and you're standing upside down. You don't know what your orientation or in time and space is anymore.
This conversation is so layered and it's very different from our other conversations, but we're, I think, really touching upon a different form of parenting. We're talking about really how we were parented is influencing us today. And
She said, only have the second baby for yourself. What everybody else in the world gets out of it is an additional bonus. So this, we've been told for decades, for centuries, we've been told that siblings will save each other. Of course, they do 9 out of 10 times. But I think as a parent, as a mother, when you decide to have another child, the second born's role is a lot more than just saving the first born. And it's so nice that you already acknowledge that.
Hi everyone, we have here a very special guest, Bakul Dua, who is a psychologist, a psychotherapist, an advocate, a mom, but most importantly a person, Bakul herself, of course multifaceted. And I'm going to hand over to you so that you can introduce yourself in whichever way you are identifying with at this moment.
At this point, yes. Thank you, Rabneet, thank you, Nanki, thank you, Geti. Very nervous because my entire body, my entire life is attuned to being a listener and to being a receiver. I struggle to speak about myself and struggle to speak in general. So thank you for putting me at ease. I'm a clinical psychologist and a psychotherapist, like Nanki said. I was speaking to you all before we started. I didn't come into psychology the traditional route. I didn't do a BA, MA, etc. in psychology. I came into psychology via the route of life itself. I struggled with my own mental health for a large part of my 20s and found my way to a therapist and a psychiatrist, and from there found my journey into psychology. And I found that for a long time I was very ashamed of not having come the traditional route. And it's only now that I'm able to own the lived experience bringing me to psychology and then doing all of my training. But I feel now that I am richer for it, but it's taken its time. I'm based in Bangalore. I have my own private practice. I also am a PhD scholar. I don't know why I'm doing it, but
Everyone doing a PhD says
I often wonder.
Everybody.
lifelong learning.
Brave. Like I said, you're very brave. I said it earlier
again,
today.
I hope my PhD advisor is not listening to, but I have no freaking idea why I'm doing it. But I am doing it and I will finish it. I'm a mom to 2 boys, Jahan, who is 4.5, and Fateh, who is 18 months. And
Fan of the names.
thank you. Thank you. I have a complicated relationship with Delhi, and which is why being here, being in this room, being in this city evokes a lot of feelings for me. But I'm so glad to be in this company, and I feel safe and held and comfortable. So yeah.
Okay, so on that note, I'm going to introduce the theme of today, which I assume is related to your complicated relationship with Delhi. We're going to be speaking about parenting adults. Yes, and parenting in adulthood. I mean, as far as you, I think today children are becoming young adults at 16 and 17. And then, of course, there's young adulthood, middle adulthood.
Yeah.
As I often say, you never stop needing your parents, right? Absolutely. So that's the theme of today. And why don't you tell us a little bit about, is that related to your complicated relationship with Delhi?
Oh gosh, yes. Okay. So I was born and brought up in Delhi. I've spent most of my life here. My parents, my mum was a Tamilian, but also born and brought up in Delhi. My dad's family migrated from Dera Ismail Khan, which is now Pakistan, but he too was born and brought up in Delhi. And I think going to school here, going to college here, met my partner here, who I married. All the big milestones happened here. But somehow this now I remember and hold as the place where my parents died rather than the place where I grew up. So it's slightly complicated. And I lost my parents at a time, both very close on the heels of each other, to COVID. And lost them at a time where I was just stepping into parenting shoes. And there's a strange complication around that, right? I think just when you're becoming a parent is the time that you start to understand your parents in a whole other light.
Absolutely.
Right? A whole other light. And a lot of the repairs in the relationship with your parents happen
Begin
at
then,
that time,
yes,
right?
yes.
And I think for me, because I lost my parents immediately after having my baby, like 6 weeks after, I think all the realizations about them, all the seeing them as human, all of that happened. I didn't have a chance to repair. I didn't have a chance to tell them that I
get it
that
now.
reparation, you know,
Yeah.
I missed that, especially I think, and I'm more comfortable speaking about it with my mum.
Yeah.
As girls, I think we all have
Yeah.
Butt heads with our mother.
complicated relationships
Yes.
with our mothers. There's deep love and there's, you know, deep rage
Anger.
and
It's all
anger
fused together.
and, yeah, and deep guilt. Like just, I think when I lost my mum soon after having a baby, because I was holding on to my anger, waiting for the right time to come where we will have this big reparation in our lives and we will meet each other as humans, I didn't realize that I won't get that time. I just immediately felt a lot of guilt. And for the longest time, I felt like I killed her. That my hate or my rage or my anger killed my mom. You know, because I was an adolescent with her for the longest time. I never outgrew that adolescent phase, and I never became an adult with her. Probably till her last days, I was just a angsty, ragey adolescent who was very demanding, and I thought we'll get over it and we'll have our chance, but we didn't. And so when she died abruptly, I think the emotion that I felt was tremendous guilt. And that guilt actually, I find that grief is easier. Guilt is just, it eats you. It completely eats you. And a lot of the meaning making of my guilt or seeking forgiveness has happened in absentia, has happened with her in elemental or in spirit form.
Yeah.
And I am at a place right now where I can say that even if your parents pass on, you don't stop having a relationship with them. They're very alive in your
Absolutely
psyche.
right.
They're alive in your heart. They're alive as talking people. So
Yeah, they still guide
they-
your decisions.
Absolutely. So I never feel like, or rather, I think after a certain point, after a certain journey with grief, I started to feel their presence very actively around me. And now it's like they're witnesses to my life's journey. They're interwoven with my personhood. I don't know how to say how can you be separate from your parents?
That's
you
so
know,
meaningful and so validating for someone like me, as
Yeah.
I mean, as someone who's gone through the same experience. Because I often I can get quite dark with my grief, and I also unfortunately lost both my parents very close in time, very abruptly.
Yeah.
They were sick, but not sick enough to pass away.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's an earth-shattering experience. It's like the Earth's axis goes whoosh in just like 1 minute, and you're standing upside down. You don't know what your orientation or in time and space is anymore. But I often, I've used a lot of humor to cope with it as well, as have you. And, I often say that, individuating from your dead parents is a lot. I mean, individuation in itself is hard.
Yeah.
And you can
What
tell
is
us a little bit.
individuation?
I was just going to say, so there is
getting
a
into psych
separation,
talk now.
individuation that happens in the mind to be able to fully cross over into adulthood and become a person. And that's why you constantly need your parents. You like Bakul said, you need to be able to go and express that rage, and sometimes you will hold back, and sometimes you'll say, okay, no, it's a little bit of hit and trial, and then you come back to yourself over a series of interactions and say, okay, now I've moved from that rage. You understand?
But can I say something? I lost my dad and I still have my mom. But hearing what you said, that you wanted to repair your relationship with your mom. I'm still the worst version of myself with my mom. There is no repairing that. I expect her to take it from me, and the same way I take it from my kids, because I mean that I'm their safe space.
Yeah.
So I know that if when you lose a parent, even I look back at my relationship with my dad and I could think that, okay, maybe I shouldn't have been so difficult, or maybe I should have taken that holiday he wanted to take, and I didn't want to spend New Year's with him. Why? But it's not as if that's guiding me into like being more present with my mom. I understand her as a mother by becoming a mother myself, but I'm still my worst version. I'm still that petulant, like cranky, like she enters the room, I find it very easy to just like scowl in the corner, because I know I'm being self-regulated around other people.
Yeah.
When my mom enters the room, all that pretense of self-regulation can crumble, and my true inner, like,
But I think that's what I
unregulated
wanna say,
self can come
That's what
out.
I miss.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the privilege you no more have,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
you always take for granted, which is what she was saying. And then you have to use your imagination, active imagination, to assume that, and at every stage of life it shows up in different ways. And something else that you said, that, it's guilt. Guilt is harder than grief. I think grief is a lot. It's a lot of guilt and a lot of sadness and a lot of despair and a lot of dread and a lot of fuck this. It's guilt is a part of it.
Yeah.
And it comes up in different shapes and sizes through your adulthood,
Yeah.
through your life. It's an ongoing process of, why did I say what I said? It may not directly influence the fact that you are interacting with your mom any differently, but I think indirectly it might be just the very fact that you're being able to take for granted that I can be this version of myself. You don't have that space anymore. And I think that's what you're referring to. And
I think I realized the day you stop being a child is the day you lose your parents, right?
Absolutely.
Then you're not a child to anybody, right? And I think as a mother, I have found in me, and I'm sure there's resonance here, the rawest of emotions that I didn't know I was capable of having. The rawest rage, the rawest love, the rawest shame, the rawest helplessness, powerlessness. And in that rawness, the last memory of rawness you have is when you were a child and you were held and comforted. So intertwined with motherhood or parenthood is also your inner child, right?
Yeah.
And I think that inner child of the parent needs so much holding, so much comforting,
so much caregiving.
so much caregiving and receiving,
Yeah.
that I think post my parents, I've had to seek it and look for it in different places. It didn't come in the unadulterated, unconditional, this angsty, like you can go and say fuck you to your parents and then be like, okay, koi baat nahi.
I mean, they won't say okay, they'll retaliate,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then you
I don't
both
think
will
I'll
be in
get an okay
separate
for
rooms for
sure,
5
but-
minutes, but it's okay. You'll come back and
Yeah,
you'll.
I
lot
was
of
that
my
angsty version only with them.
Yeah.
We all are.
Exactly,
We all are.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
even now, like I couldn't sleep properly for a long time after I had my son because he was preterm. So that anxiety of, postpartum sort of stayed on for a long time. And there was this phase for 2-3 years where the minute I would enter my parents' home, just hand over Sabar, and I would just go into my room
You
and
mentioned
sleep for
this.
3 hours. And then it was time to go back home. And my mom was like, we don't hang out because you just come and sleep. And I couldn't stay awake, even if I was on the couch. And I'm sitting and I'm looking at my mom and dad and I'm passing out.
But
I
think
couldn't
about it,
physically
you
stay awake.
sleep when you're at utmost safety.
Yeah. And literally, and it's not like I'm not comfortable at home. I'm very comfortable at home. But I don't know what it is about the couch at my parents' home.
Oh, yes.
I would show up and and honestly, guys, I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
But
It's called that feeling called home.
no, I mean, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
It's
And
their
not to
parents,
take
it's
away-
not a place,
yeah.
it's not the couch.
It's just
their
I look at their
presence.
face, I was like, hi, and I'm going to sleep. So I didn't understand for the longest time what was happening to me. That why was I doing this? And then it slowly struck me that I'm probably just feeling very relaxed.
Yeah.
Did you feel guilt about like also feeling joy in your baby, or like how did that, because postpartum is such a confusing period in general, so I can't even imagine the added these dual emotions.
And like I said earlier, just before the podcast started, I said you're brave, right? To be able to enter this journey of motherhood, knowing that you don't have them, and to be in an ongoing way experience that grief very alive within you. How has it influenced your developing relationship with your child?
Yeah.
Children.
Wow. Maybe I'll respond to you first. I think, no, there was no question of guilt when joy came, because my parents were full of joy, just people who were full of joy. And I think emotions like guilt rarely touched their lives. And I think I was the more guilt prone
Daughter.
elder daughter who blames herself for everything. But I think it was a struggle to feel joy. I felt like I couldn't enjoy my child as much as I would have wanted to, and children need to feel like they're being enjoyed.
Yeah.
Right? That's the
100%.
basis of self-esteem. That's the basis of, they see it in your eyes. as
Yeah.
Mirroring,
parents, right?
yes.
Mirroring that I'm so lucky that you were born. I'm so happy. I expect nothing of you except just be whoever the hell you need to be. I am lucky that you were just born, right? And I feel like for the first year of my life, for the first year of my son's life, first 2 years maybe, I'm not sure what he saw in my eyes. I worry that he saw deadness in my eyes, because within me was a fight between like the life instinct and the life force, or the death force. I had seen 4 deaths happen in a period of 5 months, right? My aunt, my first cousin, my mum and my dad, and all extremely close people. This was my family. And of course there were still people left behind, but what's left is not the same, right? And then you're not
And it
4
never will
minus,
be.
it can never. So that constellation changes. So for me, my entire family was wiped out. What I knew as love, entire family was wiped out. And at that time, I struggled, I think, to find a reason to live. My child did not feel like a good enough reason for me to live, because this was a new attachment. My old attachments were much stronger for me. And here's this little blob that needs milk every 2 hours, that needs love. I didn't feel natural love towards this new entity in my life. What I felt was love and longing and yearning for the family I had lost, right? And I remember feeling it very physically. I remember feeling physically like a paper that had giant holes burnt into it, right? Just empty spaces where love used to exist. And which was the first time I felt something so viscerally just emptied out,
But
hollowed
grief is
out. Where
very physical, very physical.
right? And so the first year or two, I struggled to. I think I enjoyed my child, but I could have enjoyed him a lot more. And the reason I struggled was because my parents were kind of like this source of joy and light. They were the source in my life. I'm a pretty, I get in and out of moods. I question life a lot. I can tend to be a little angsty and moody, and I can see life with very dark lenses. But my parents were eternal optimists. They were very just joyful people. They enjoyed food, they enjoyed music, they enjoyed literature, they enjoyed people. A lot of life came into my sister and my life through them. So we didn't have to live so much. We would just borrow life from them. And then when you have a child, you can't bring deadness to them. I had assumed that life would come to my child also from my parents, right? Or their friends, their lives, their home, their presence, their humor, their food. And suddenly I had to be the source of life and joy for my child. And that's immense pressure. It's not that you have to be happy all the time. I don't think
But
children
it's
need
a lot.
that. But I was just like, kahan se laun? Where do I get it
I
from?
can't even imagine. That's why I called you brave, that I don't know if I have it in me. Because, I fully relate to every, I want to say, symptom that you mentioned over there, that you you don't have anything to carry on. It's just like, why are you here? A feeling that I have struggled with in my context of multiple losses. Why was I left behind?
Exactly. Why not me?
And I struggle with it even now as
Yeah.
part of my own mental health. And then you find a way around it, and but then that's where the purpose versus purposelessness dialogue comes in,
Yeah.
But it's very, I can only imagine how much it has taken out of you or anyone who has experienced, an earth shattering loss when they become a parent. because the parenting you receive is going to be the parenting you impart. And when you
Absolutely.
very abruptly and suddenly don't have that source of love, you have to dig very, 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 very deep into
Yeah.
yourself to be able. And I often say that, you know, to be able to love after loss is possibly the most courageous and most inspiring thing that anybody can do, you know. So you're doing it.
Wow, I'd never thought of it that way. And I wanted to say that we do parent the way that we were parented. I think some conscious parenting, of course, we bring in very intentionally saying, I don't want to do what my parents did here. So there is a lot of conscious
Yeah.
parenting there. But much of our parenting is unconscious.
Yeah.
No matter how many parenting books we read,
Yeah.
we love the way we've been loved.
Yeah.
We relate the way we've been related to. And much of it is unconscious. And I think, Nanki, it was very hard to find it in me. And I think once a little bit of that acute pain started to abate, it was the easiest thing because love is all I knew. It was what I was made of. All that was left within me of my parents was their voice, was their sound, was
It's
their
part of your
laugh.
body memory.
It's completely part of my body memory. So I think the best and the worst of what I have to offer to my child comes from that source. And I think therapy has helped a lot because before I became a parent, a large part of should I be a parent or not, 2-3 years of discussing with my therapist, I don't want to be my parents, right? And I think now, post them being gone, I think I want to intentionally bring in as much as I can of them. As
You know, that's
as
so
I can.
interesting because, I mean, just like you mentioned, I'm just bringing in a personal perspective. Like you said, you were the adolescent, raging adolescent. I was the good girl. Yes,
Yeah.
with both my mom and my dad, and I looked after them, and I was their parent in many ways, especially when they were ill.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was all of 23 when I lost mom, and by 25 I had lost dad as well. And the only thing I wanted to be was them. You know, the only thing I have ever wanted to be was them, and it was only therapy that gave me the space to become my own person.
I have noticed that change in you in
Yes.
the last 10 years.
Because that was the way my grief was. Like, it was just like, I want to be them. I became them. I mean, in every way.
Yeah.
Whether it was the foundation that I set up for my mom. I mean, I've got more than my face from her. I've got my profession from her. But actually, I'm a lot more in terms of my personality, like my dad. You know, he was. My parents were also similar to your parents. I would have loved to meet them. Very fun people, and I must say they were a lot more affable than me. Like, I live in my silence, and they were just fun. They had so many friends that my best friends, or still my closest friends, were like, "Dude, your parents have so many friends in different circles. Like, even
We
at
used to
their
have a good time with
yeah,
them.
even at their respective prayer meetings, like there were hundreds and
Right,
hundreds of people, and I remember people being shocked, you know, and that's their goodwill. So I think the only thing I was so young, I was not even an adult yet, if I may say so, you know, even though, yeah, biologically you're 23 and 25, but we all know
not
that
at
you
all.
really
Yeah.
become an adult
Not
after
at all.
25.
Much later, yeah.
I was like, I became my father towards my brothers. I became I became that parent, you know. It is only therapy that
have
has
to individuate from.
yes, that has and being a therapist. I really want to. I became a therapist before I became Nanki.
Yeah. You
That
did.
has been my
You did.
greatest learning. I think she's seen that.
Say more about that.
Well, I think when you lose so much, I mean, I also lost mom, dad, and I also lost my twin brother. I mean, I was caregiving for him for a very long time, 17, 18 years, both me and my elder brother. You know, there's very little you have to hold on to. And I think I was very young when illness struck our family, and we were also very, very, very tight knit and close. I was that student, like I was the good girl, right? So I was that student in school where achievement became my anchor. You know, I want to say blessed to have my efforts at academics be rewarded with outcomes, positive outcomes, and that's how I've been blessed with great friends who also, of course, along the journey of my life, unfortunately, you know, it's not everyone's cup of tea to manage a life like that. But it was my journey as a therapist, despite my push and pull with, do I want to do this? Will I be able to make it? Will I be able to earn enough? Will I be able to, sustain my family without my parents? There were pressures. But it was actually my job as my second job, which I took under extreme distress at Shiv Nadar School as a counseling psychologist. And it was really special because I was one of the first counselors there. And thank you to the people who kind of trusted me. I didn't have as much experience, and I just lost dad. So it was kind of like, just take anything. And that's where I found my love for psychotherapy. And at a time when I was battling this sense of, I don't know how to live, dying is easier.
Yeah.
There were these children, these adolescents, who just showed up believing in my skills even when I didn't. And I would wonder that, and in fact, my first, you always remember your first patient, right? Was a very, very difficult, if I may say, clinically really suffering. And there was a lot of suicidal ideation, and there was a lot of, talk of death.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I needed him or he needed me,
Exactly. Yeah.
because we normalized it for each other. And I healed through that.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when I say that I became a therapist, and then I realized, there is another part of me that can be a person as well.
Yeah.
And I can be I can be a friend, I can be, because, that's
Through
what
the socially sanctioned role of a caregiver, you
absolutely,
found
because that's the only identification I had. I mean, I was only 15 when everybody fell sick.
Yeah.
So, both me and my elder brother Kabir what do you do when the ship is sinking? You kind of survive, right? And then there was a prolonged, across 10 years, and it was worst case scenario, which was painful. It still is. And it has ramifications for the rest of your life. But I think my role as a therapist, and of course I must add the clarifier that it was only because I went to therapy and healed and continue to heal those parts of me that I am able to show up as a good enough, I'm going to say good enough therapist, because that's my purpose. That's sometimes that helps me offset that feeling of why was I left behind,
Right.
if I may say so. So I think that's what I mean by I became a therapist, and then I became a nanki, a person who has interests and hobbies and
Outside of being a caregiver.
yes, because a therapist is also a caregiver.
Exactly.
So
So honest of both of you, and really honestly so brave to have this conversation. I mean, I've known you for fairly long now, but this is the first time I'm hearing you really vocalize all of this. And I think it's important to vocalize it because for someone sitting on the other side, it's inspiring in a strange way. Like, I'm like, okay, life is, I always believe, because we've all had our struggles, right? You always believe that, okay, life will throw curveballs at you, and how you respond to them is a process and a journey. And I mean, honestly, to see you sitting here now in the role that you are after everything that you've gone through is really commendable. And
I would like to believe that I have a team
you do.
in some form.
you do
that
you
I'm
do.
channeling. And
But it is true. I mean, if you lose a parent,
as do you.
yeah.
It's eerie how that was the first conversation. I have to tell you this, that we have this in common, and it's so incredibly sad. But I think there is something about connecting to. I mean, I want to say a little bit of a funny thing over here. I have never met Shah Rukh Khan in my life. I have never really been into movie. I mean, we all grew up on, Bollywood or whatever those movies were. But I often have felt this sense of deep connection with the human in him. I'm not really very impressed with celebrities in general, if I may say so. But I feel like he mirrors, you know, so much.
Especially when he speaks about his parents.
Yes.
He also
Yeah.
lost,
Yes.
lost his
Yeah,
parents.
both
And
sides.
in a very
Very
similar
young.
way. And it just makes you like, it makes you feel connected to a stranger in the most powerful ways.
Absolutely.
And for just that moment, you feel less alone.
Absolutely. I think him in particular. I
Yes,
find,
yes, and I've thought about
very,
it
very
many
drawing.
times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt the same when Gloria first told me about Bakul,
Yeah.
and I don't know why I didn't act on it, because I'm like, oh, what should I connect? Like, hi, we both have grandparents.
Want to get coffee?
Like, and you know, me and Kabir, sometimes we do that. You know that we have.
I've heard some of your jokes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we went
same.
to
My
DPS.
sister and I. That's the only way we have survived this is to go really dark.
Yes, we are the founders of You Can Join, Dead Parent Society.
No, we are the founders.
Oh, there's a fight.
How dare you?
So yeah, those are in the lighter moments, but it really helps you, you know, as Esther Perel once said, that it really helps you remaster and reclaim all the power that death just takes away from you, you know. So yeah.
What helps you reclaim that power? Humor.
Yes,
Yeah.
humor really helps you remaster a narrative in ways that, and I know she has it better than me.
I mean, her humor is wild. Like, I want to frame her Instagram
Yeah.
stories.
I hide behind memes. I'm not naturally funny. I
Yeah,
just hide
Bakul
behind
is really not a psychologist; she's an influencer.
You are an
Stories
influencer.
are kick ass.
I am trying very hard to be an influencer. Anyone who's listening, please don't follow me. I have a private account. But please don't.
No, I'm going to
So do
start
I,
a
so
fan
do
page.
I.
I'm going to start a
All
fan
I
page.
want
Everyone can
is to be an
follow.
influencer. I don't want to be a PhD scholar. I don't want to be a mother. I just really want to be an influencer. And I'm influencing all the wrong people. Clearly.
Not at all. Not at all.
I want to ask the two of you, and I think because this conversation is so layered and it's very different from our other conversations, but we're, I think, really touching upon a different form of parenting. We're talking about really how we were parented is influencing us today, and like how loss and grief related to our parents is influencing us today. I want to just talk a little bit about your relationship with your sister after losing your parents, and has and I'll tell you why I asked this question, because after I had my first child, I was quite clear I wanted to have a second
course.
child. And the reason why I felt that is because I had, like, my dad fell ill also for the last 10-15 years of his life. He was also, I mean, he was fine, but we'd also dealt with like cancer once and cancer again, and the only person who got the loss immediately, like when it
your
happened,
brother.
was my brother. You know, the only person who
Absolutely.
understood was my brother. The only one who was there with me in New York at Sloan when my dad was being treated for cancer was my brother. So I just felt like that sibling role became very important to me, and hence I wanted my children to have a sibling. I just want to reflect on that dynamic a little bit for both of you personally. What about you? Like,
you go first.
So I'm very close to my sister. Both of us are very different people. We see the world through very different eyes. Our worldviews could not be more different. Our views of humanity could not be more different. But of course, I think there is a very fundamental, deep connect that comes comes from the way my parents raised us, and they nurtured the sibling bond. So I can't remember a time where ever there was competition or threat or anything. There's always been deep closeness. Of course, like I said, we see the world through very different lenses, so that's there. But you know, this question of whether a child needs a sibling, I was very, very clear that I always only wanted one child. I was very, very clear. No, I went from I don't want any kids to one kid. And I was very clear. And even after my parents passed, and I think Jahan was maybe 2 or whatever, I think my husband started to talk about the fact that, you know, I've seen you and Malika deal with the worst that life could throw at you, just by virtue of being together in it, right? And imagine if she wasn't there, how it would be for you. And don't you think, Jahan, we should also think about it for Jahan? And my instant and my continued reaction to that was no, absolutely no. Jahan needing a sibling cannot be my reason to have another baby, right? I felt like my needs as a mother had to come before Jahan's needs.
which is true.
As a child.
I 100% agree.
Right? And I was like, I'm not ready. I don't want one. I don't
Yeah.
feel the need for one.
Yeah.
Not yet. Or rather, I haven't figured out my why. If the why comes to me, I'll figure it out. But Jahan needing a sibling to tide him over through his life doesn't feel like a convincing enough reason for me right now. There's got to be something that has to come from within me. And he didn't understand it. I think he's still, for him, children, I mean, people should have siblings so that they can weather these things together, much like, what you're saying. I think somewhere after I started to really enjoy Jahan, when my grief started to become less painful, I started to feel like I had lost so much family that it started to feel like the best of my family days were behind me. I was constantly living in the past. And I felt like family had given my life deep meaning, just deep, deep meaning. I think the deepest meaning came from relationships and love and attachments with family. And I started to feel like I need more family in the future rather than in the past.
Yeah.
And the decision to have Fateh came from this very deeply felt need for more love.
Wow.
I had more love to give, I had more love to want. And it was then that I felt like, no, the best of my family life has to be ahead of me, not behind me. Otherwise, I will live my life.
I
in the
really
past.
like that answer. I feel like that is such a nice
Hope. There's
and
so much
hopeful answer
Sunshine.
and true.
That's not me generally.
You keep saying that, and I think that what I want to say is that especially in the beginning when you were talking to us about your grief, and I had a really tough time keeping a straight face, but I was like, it's too soon to cry, so I was trying to hold it in. But what I couldn't stop looking at was that your smile does reach your eyes, and I
It's
mean
not
that
my makeup.
no, it's not your makeup. No, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. I think I do in some way see you imbibe the love and the joyousness that you are so proud of, And if any of that is translating to Jahan and Fateh, which I'm sure it is, I mean, what lucky boys they are. So I do see that I do see that translation happening for you, and I know that, when you described the 2 years where your eyes were just dead, I think that I honestly have not recovered from that statement because it just threw me off. But the fact that you found it in you to say that, listen, I need this for me. I think that that's a very, very important reflection because so during COVID, my Nana Nani passed away within 4 months of each other. They were perfectly healthy, and my Nani got a cardiac arrest. My Nana battled COVID in the hospital for 17 days all by himself. And so the whole thing was just painful, and I'm sitting there pregnant trying to figure out whatever I could from the phone. And then they passed away completely out of the blue. And I think that my son saved my mom's life because I had Sabar subsequently. And I was just like, here, he's preterm, you figure it out for me, I can't do it. But for the longest time, I thought Sabar was saving my mom's life. Yes. But actually, it was her siblings that were her true anchors. And I only have one baby right now, and I've also I still have that debate in my head that one is enough, and you should only have a sibling if you really want to have another baby, and not for Sabar. I've always said that if I have another baby, it'll be for me and not for Sabar. What Sabar gets out of it will be bonus for him, right? However, I went through this phase where when I saw my mom deal with her grief like this, and I was like, you cannot do life without a sibling. And I'm very close to my sister. My husband is very close to his brother, so I see that sibling bond everywhere, right? So I was like, you cannot do life without a sibling. But I really also resonated with your answer that I have more love in me to give, because a friend of mine once told me, she said, only have the second baby for yourself. What everybody else in the world gets out of it is an additional bonus. So this, we've been told for decades, for centuries, we've been told that that siblings will save each other. Of course they do 9 out of 10 times, but I think as a parent, as a mother, when you decide to have another child, the second born's role is a lot more than just saving the first born. And it's so nice that you already acknowledge that.
I also want to say one thing. I know a lot of single children who have heard me say that I would always want my children to have a sibling, and they've said, well, we don't miss a sibling in our lives.
Yeah.
So I also feel like this is my reality, or like, you know, that's why we're maybe overemphasizing the role of the sibling.
No,
But a
I
lot of
100%
single
agree.
children don't feel the need, and
Yeah.
absolutely fine. And a lot of parents don't feel the need.
I've
and
said
fine.
this in a previous
Yeah.
episode that everyone should have a sibling.
That's because we love our siblings
No,
and we have
it's,
great
so I,
relationships also.
I mean, I
But
joke that
clinically,
if I
what do you
have
think?
kids, then you have to commit to having two, you know, because
yeah.
because that's the least you owe your. I mean, we were 3 growing up, and I think it's so important to say that your sibling is literally your first friend,
Yeah.
and the order of life says you will go through loss, right? But hopefully, your sibling is the one who kind of traverses with you through, like your partners leave, your friends leave.
Your partners come in so much later. Your children
They
come
don't
in
have
when
the
I was in my
context that
mid
your sibling
30s.
does.
Is there, and
Yeah.
it's a very, very
Right.
difficult
Yeah.
relationship.
It's a
Yes,
difficult
I mean,
relationship, yes.
very similar to what you're saying. I think we've had a very similar context of loss even there, where we've lost one sibling and I have one sibling. Very complicated, so I won't go too much into it. But I can't imagine, no matter how hard it has been, because when we first lost both my parents, and we still had, well, my twin brother to look after, it was like we were suddenly thrust into co-parenting roles,
Yeah,
when
Yeah.
we don't even know how to talk to each other as siblings.
Yeah,
You understand?
yeah.
And it was a lot of therapy and healing on both our ends to really begin to relate to each other as siblings. And yes, I remember soon after loss that there was a friend who came and said, like, in trying to console me, she said something very meaningful, and it stuck with me 10 years later, that, you know, at this time there's nobody else except Kabir who understands what you're going through, because he's gone through the exact same thing. And actually that has endured even in our, I mean, we've had our own 50 shades of our sibling relationship, because I think sisters are different, brothers and
Yeah.
sisters are very different, and we are as different as chalk and cheese. You know, I am this super emotional person, and he
Kabir
is
is
very
not.
black and white. I think he's emotional, he just doesn't experience life and doesn't look at it the same way that I do.
Yeah.
That took understanding. But till today, my most healing moments are when we have that conversation about that shared past. And a lot of it was a lot of adversity, a lot of, like, we've lived in hospitals, you know,
Yeah.
looking after our parents, our brother. But despite that, there was so much love in the family that I think that's what it's very binding in a good way, not in a negative way. So I can't imagine what it must be like if I were without him in this world.
But guys, can I say one thing? This is a testament to how we were parented, that we
Yeah.
all have a good
Absolutely.
relationship with our
Absolutely.
siblings. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that doesn't, it's not a guaranteed outcome.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, I mean, there's so many siblings that don't speak.
Yeah.
I see it
That have
very
got each other
closely around
deeply.
me.
Yeah.
I think I've seen this very, very closely around me, where, and as a therapist, I think I've seen some very deep sibling wounds. Often, unfortunately, you know, pandered to by
Estrangement.
parents.
But can we
or,
reflect on that a little bit? Because I wonder, because now I'm parenting siblings, right? And they fight, which is normal. And of course, they love each other as well. But they do fight. And sometimes I wonder, sometimes yesterday they both wanted me at the same time. And I was just like, should I clone myself? Like, how do I like go to both of you? And then they were both getting upset when I was like going to one over the other. How do you ensure, from a clinical perspective, what do parents have to do to get this kind of a bond where like your sibling is your ride or die? Because that is what I would want for my kids. How do you?
I think first you have to acknowledge that siblings are each other's first friends and first enemies.
Yeah.
And as they navigate that and negotiate that through life, of course with some parental influence but not interference. Yes, you have to allow them to develop their own relationship. And I think, like every relationship, siblinghood requires work.
Yeah.
It requires work, it requires effort. We don't always get each other, and you have to become okay with that. you know. You don't always grieve the same way, and you have to become okay with that. And I think the reason why it's so important to talk about this in loss is because you know, after loss, there's this unique quality about at least it's there in premature loss, but you know, even loss in general, the person who has lost a relationship is likely to feel that they've got it the worst. I don't know what it is that nobody else, even though there are 5 other people in the family, there is this quality about losing a loved one to death where you feel like you have got it worse and they've got it easier, right? Which is not true, but it's a feeling. And how do you make space for that in a family? Because if everyone is competing for that position, if I may say so, it really complicates. And I've done some family therapy work in grief under a lot of supervision, and to be able to make space and get them to listen to each other is the only way to connect. That actually it is it's deeply complex, and your pain is your pain, but it's actually very similar to his pain, but it's not the same. You know, similar is not same. But it can become healing over a period of time, so you have to be gradual about it and intentional about it. Parents cannot be interfering in every little fight of like siblings fight. That's normal, you know. Of course, as long as safety is ensured when they are hitting each other.
I just now start separating them. Is that okay? I'm like, you're separate rooms, guys, enough.
I think what I've come to realize, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but 2 siblings will experience 2 parents very, very differently.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm a very different parent to Jahan. And Fateh has found me in a very different place in my life. He's found me much more relaxed. He's found me much less anxious. He's probably going to realize that a lot of my anxieties about life, parenthood, myself were projected onto Jahan. So Jahan for me feels like an extension of me. There's this weird enmeshment. I see Jahan as myself. And Fateh is like this. Fateh is who I would want to be, right? So, but all of these are
So
just projections, right? These are just projections. They are 2 independent boys. They don't carry anything of me. They're not supposed to. But parents project a lot of their unlived life or their worst fears or their aspirations on their children,
and
right?
unremembered life.
Unremembered, exactly. I'm not consciously aware of
What do you mean
all that
unremembered life?
just another way of saying unconscious.
Okay.
Right? It's something that I can't consciously articulate.
Okay.
I can't really pinpoint and say, I can now because I've made meaning and made it conscious in therapy with my own therapist. But I see so much of Jahan in me that I started to respond to him the way I needed to be responded to, as opposed to who he is as a person. But this was not conscious to me, right? My actions, I was just acting it out. It was made sense of by pausing, reflecting, taking it back to therapy, and so on and so forth. But coming back to the reality that 2 siblings will get 2 very different parents at 2 very different life stages, 2 very different mind spaces, right? So, number one, they will come into 2 very different worlds. They will have an overlapping shared reality, but very naturally they will see you as very different people. Number 2, I think with siblings I've often found it's very natural for parents or families to quickly stereotype and cast them into roles. Ye to bahut waisa hai. I do it myself. This one is like that. This one is the Sharif one. This one is the Gunda. This one very naturally, very easily, we start to also cast our children into roles. And you'll be surprised at how much those roles start to determine the way they are with each other. They stick. So we'll take one little quality and we'll make that the dominant story about that guy. Oh, this is a fun guy. Oh no, this is a serious guy. And those start to become stories that govern their lives as well.
That become their internal
stories.
Characters.
Absolutely. So the more I tell Jahan that, you're the big brother, you must take care of Fateh, I can see him internalizing it already and then being the slightly sacrificial guy. I mean, he doesn't need to do it, but I can see how my words determine who they become as people, right? And I think sometimes, I don't remember what my parents consciously did to make sure that Malika and I were close, but they just stayed out of our way. I mean, I just remember the best thing they did as parents. they were not in our faces. They truly had, they told us very early in life, please don't get into this marriage nonsense. You know, you don't need to get married. You don't need to, you don't have to do anything for us. You're your own.
do you.
You do you. I remember very early on in life, my dad introduced me to the Khalil Gibran poem about your children are not your children. They are.
I love how this has come up
yeah,
so many
it's
times in the
times in this
podcast.
entire
Yeah,
season,
yeah.
I just love
I
it.
remember him sitting and explaining it to me. They are sons and daughters of life's longing for itself.
Yeah.
They come from you, but they don't belong to you.
They come, through
Yeah,
you,
through you, but
yeah,
not.
Yeah.
And I remember him sitting me down when I was maybe 12 or 13 and telling me this. And he said, this is it. I mean, you're your own person. We don't own you. Whatever you do, you'll do for yourself. And somehow that didn't raise us to be selfish pricks. It maybe just deepened the love that we had for them. And we just always came back home.
Yeah, and that's a
We
testament to their
always-
parenting,
yeah.
right?
So even with siblinghood, I feel like they just stayed out of our way.
Yeah.
And there was, I think, of course, growing up, there was a lot of comparison because I fell into the trap of the good girl. Malika fell into the trap of the rebel or whatever. And then when you grow up, you realize we all have all parts
Yes.
within us. And now she has the other parts, the good girl parts, and I can be the rebel parts or whatever. But I think there was no love forced on us. There were no values forced on us. I think it was all just modeled. And just a lot of shared joy. I think there was no like hum saath saath hai
Yeah.
indoctrination. Just a lot of laughing together. I really, if I was to close my eyes and remember my family, all I remember is just a lot of laughing together, a lot of making up songs together, a lot of laughing together, laughing at each other, laughing at
Yeah,
other
I think
people.
connection. There was a
just
lot of
joy.
connection.
If you can make room for shared joy, I think that's pretty much.
Yeah.
And of course, Malika and I probably hate each other as much as we love each
Yeah,
other.
Yeah.
I think there's got to be
Yeah.
room
Running
for-
like a sister relationship.
I think that's that, but I feel like that's that is how all
It
sibling
is.
relationships
Yeah.
are.
Yeah,
like
there's
they,
no other way to survive in sisterhood.
And parents have to be able to tolerate that kind of rage in the family, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
You just have to.
Yeah.
True love only exists where true hate exists.
That's true. I don't think it's only sisters. I think it's brothers as well.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
it's a
a
sibling
different
thing.
trajectory, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different
Yeah, I mean, my brother and I hardly spoke while growing up, and now
Same.
he's like my closest friend. You know,
Yes.
now like there's no one I'd rather be in a room with.
Yeah.
But like growing up, like when we were in school together, I would like pretend we were not even related.
my brother used to do the same thing to me.
He used to turn away.
He used
if
to
was
not
in
say
the room.
hello to me in
Yeah,
school.
same.
We would
Yeah.
Guys, can I say there's a firstborn thing? I've done it to my sister.
Yeah,
I used to
it's
be like, oh my
firstborn
god,
thing.
she's come again.
I
now
want to
she'll
say
want to
firstborns
try
are
talk to me.
assholes.
I was also an asshole.
Yeah,
to my
I was
sister.
to my sister.
I am not. I was always.
I was.
But you see it, you see that dynamic also work out, and it'll change, of course. But your firstborn has known your undivided
Yeah.
love and
Yeah,
attention.
yeah, for sure.
And sometimes I feel guilty that my second-born has to share me. He's never gotten my undivided attention, but he has her. You
Yeah.
know, which she never had.
Yes.
So she didn't have that like sibling who is just this who unquestionable part of her world, and
Yeah.
for him she is that. So I feel like that dynamic is very difficult to understand as a firstborn. As a firstborn, you know life without your sibling. So even at a subconscious level, so you are able to look away from them and be like, hey, this person doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
This is an add-on.
This is an add-on, Whereas as a second-born, you've never known life
life
without
Yeah.
your elder sibling. So it's a very
Yeah.
different equation.
That's why I'm saying I can't imagine a life where Kabir was not there through even in moments where you don't know how to do this and you don't do
Because
it.
you don't
and-
know life without
because
him.
even the cribbing, calling out,
Yeah.
is part of some aspect of I want to say, what is the word I'm looking for? Like it's there, like some security. There is that presence is there.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, again, as someone who's gone through loss so early, when you lose your parents, you lose your semblance of home.
Yeah.
But at least a sibling is what comes closest to it.
Yeah.
Is what I would
100%.
say,
I mean, they're the only ones who've known you
so
through
I'm
your
a
whole
big
life.
propagator for.
No, this has been very interesting on many levels. I just want to relate a small anecdote, but that's what it's with siblings. They're your punching bag, but you won't let anyone else punch them,
Yeah.
No
right?
chance.
Oh,
And I
yes,
saw this even
exactly.
play out in my kids who are like so young, but like when they fight, my younger one will go and smack Ayla or like he'll like pinch her or whatever. And that day he thought someone was scolding her. No one was scolding her. And you see this little thing, okay? He's like not even 2 yet. And he just looked at that person and he went charging on her behalf and like whacked that person, okay? Not that I'm encouraging him to whack anybody,
But you were
it
very
literally
proud.
became.
Secretly.
Inside, I was like, yeah, you know, stand up for
job.
your sister.
Yeah,
You know,
good
I
job.
appreciate that. Stand up for your
Secretly, yeah.
sister.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah.
100%. I am allowed to call him an asshole, but if anyone
The
else
word
does,
comes.
That's
that
not
ain't
allowed.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly
That's
that.
love, like in its purest
Exactly.
form, loyalty.
But also with grief, but the other thing I wanted to say as far as siblings or any family member is concerned, that grief, even though it's shared, is also so different.
Very different.
Because you're processing your own relationship with that
Yes.
parent, which can really manifest in so many different ways, right? Like, so when I lost my dad, like it was a very different form of grief than my brother who lost my dad, who was contending his relationship with this father figure, you know? For me, I wasn't contending this relationship with my father figure because it was a less complicated relationship.
I think fathers and daughters tends to be like she
Less
said,
complicated.
yes,
And I
yes.
noticed that in my husband as well. When he lost his father, he had just become, I mean, we just had, our daughter was already there, but our son came soon after. And he also had to contend with his own role as a father by like acknowledging his own relationship with his father. So I feel like, yeah, that grief while shared is also so individual to your
Absolutely.
relationship with
So
your
different.
parent.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think I've held curiosity about the way my sisters held her grief. And I think one thing that I noticed is post losing my parents, she's put them on a pedestal, like they become godlike figures for her. And whereas I've gone out of my way to ensure that they're human. I mean,
Yeah.
they're
I think
They're-
that's very
they're-
similar to what I did initially, right? I became them because they
Yeah.
are God, and I think that creates this distance, and it kind of
yeah.
I want to say immortalizes them. Is that the
Yeah,
right term?
yeah.
But then therapy helps
Yeah.
you.
To be able to see them as flawed
Yes,
people
and
as
humans
well.
and yeah, who hurt you as well.
yeah,
You know, not
yeah.
because they wanted to, but because
Yeah.
that's
just
human
yeah.
experience. So yeah, different responses. But very similar that my reaction, for example, to my dad's loss, also a bit sudden, very different from my brother who has had a very different father. So for me,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, you know, as the daughter, I was the only daughter, even in the extended family, I was like this. I mean, I could get away with murder when it came to my father.
Yeah.
I really have a very, very unconditional relationship with him, which I understood in therapy. Mom, not so much. And he does not resonate with dad the way I carry dad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it took learning and communication when we started talking about our grief to be able to learn that about each other. And I really want to say that we don't talk. I think this episode has been so meaningful because it's so close to me. People don't want to talk about grief. I didn't want to talk about grief. I have written and I refuse to publish it. They both know, you know, because it scares everyone. But I really want to say it is going to come to one and all, you know.
It
And
does.
if
It's
you
the
really
cycle of
develop
life.
a language for it, it's going to make your life easier.
Yeah.
And definitely those who've gone through loss around you, and there are many, we all go through it.
Yeah.
It's going to make life a lot easier for them, and they won't have to shrink away from you, you know.
I think that's really important. And I feel like the other thing I do want to talk about before we end is that, you know, we've spoken, I think you'd also said at the beginning that the reason why we're doing this podcast is because we want to link conversations to the Indian context.
Yeah.
And I think you've also spoken a lot about like the decolonization of therapy. And like this conversation of grief, I also feel is linked to that because how grief plays out in the Indian context is so different from anywhere else because we are still being parented by our adults even as adults, you know, whereas in like the West, quite often once you have your own kids and you move halfway across the country, your parents, while you still might be very close to them, are playing a more marginal role in your
More
day-to-day life.
peripheral for sure.
Yeah. Whereas for us, like, I mean, I don't have parents in Delhi anymore. Like my dad's not there and my mom lives in Goa. And I really feel that loss, right? Like I feel like the fact that like who's taking care of me?
Exactly.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I don't have a parent. When I go to my mom's house, similar to when you go to your mom's house, I'm like, here are the kids, you take care of them. I'm like,
I'm out.
I'm out, you know? And they'll they'll take them with open arms, there's no like questioning that.
Yeah.
So I feel like grief in the Indian context also is that much more entrenched because you're losing that barrier or like that sort of like protection. Like when I lost my dad, that's what I felt. I felt like I'd lost a layer of protection, that was just above me. It had been peeled away and exposed.
Yes.
And that was a very difficult feeling to like sort of reconcile, like being like, okay, like this has been like, it's an open wound right now.
That really, I mean,
Yeah.
you really worded it well, because I understood that losing mom was very different from losing dad. Just the role moms play and dads play. Like you lose mom and they I mean, women do so much, mothers do so much. Of course, home was not the same, but with dad, there was a very real, there was a loss of with mom going, there was a loss of home and that sense of home and security. But with dad, there was a loss of security in the larger world, that loss of protection.
Absolutely.
And that's an anxiety I move around with,
yeah.
even as an adult, as a full grown woman, and I think that really resonates with what you're saying, that protective layer. And I think maybe that's why my love for bringing dads into every conversation. I truly believe that dads deserve space, and if we allow them to be dads.
No, I also think it's the first loss, the first parent that goes, because that feeling of loss,
maybe.
if whether you lose your mom or your dad first, I feel like that first loss is the most profound in a way, because you've never felt anything like that before. Then you're suddenly like jarred, and then of course in your cases there was a dual loss, which is of course, I mean, I can't even imagine what that would have been like. Very quick, yeah. But
I mean, I firmly believe in my father's case. I don't know if you believe that, but that's my meaning making. That again, my mom was sick, but not sick enough to die. My father was a heart patient, but not as much of a heart patient to go, but he
Died of
literally died of a
heartbreak.
broken heart
Yeah.
syndrome. Like,
Absolutely. I believe that about
because
my
the
dad,
doctors
yeah.
refuse to believe that he's going into heart failure so quickly, and this is his first admission, and I mean, there's a full story to do with that. And I mean, we went to heaven and earth quite literally to get him a heart. We traveled to a different city, etc. But and I think that I don't want to romanticize it, but there was a strange sense of,
I believe it,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah,
fully.
that
Yeah.
I know how much I hurt when I saw my father grieve for my mom.
Yes.
And those 19 months were, I almost was like, is my pain worse or his pain worse?
Yes.
And when he went, of course, there was no room to grieve because we were really battling a lot of other things. But it's a strange thing to even articulate, but I felt relief for him.
Absolutely the same. I
Really?
think I felt such relief after my dad passed.
Yes. Oh,
I
he doesn't have to go through that.
That ache that I saw him live with.
Yes,
I
oh my
think
God.
my personal grief was nothing in comparison
Absolutely.
to watching him miss my mum and live that life. I don't know, just men of that generation perhaps, they don't,
They got it lucky.
I don't know, man, they don't know how to live
They
without
got it
women.
lucky. Like, I mean, to know love like that, like, is quite, I mean, that's all.
But I mean, once he passed, I also got to see facets of their relationship a little bit more dispassionately. And it's also just the kind of codependence that parents end up having, especially that generation.
Especially the
There is
men.
enough respect.
Yes, right?
Especially
my
men.
mom was running his life for him. Of course, he didn't know who he was without her because she was his everything.
Yeah, same.
And I'm not going to put that on a pedestal. I don't think I love
Yeah.
that aspect of their relationship. I feel like she probably could have had a slightly easier life if he wasn't so dependent on her. And I often wonder if I, as a daughter, and I think that's also something you wonder after your parents go, could I have been more of an adult in their relationship and called out patterns and said, no, this is not cool, don't do it. Or because they stayed out of our lives, I should have continued to stay
That's a
out
tough
of
one.
their life.
I mean,
And
I've thought about it, and I find a lot more faults in my mom. Because
Typical
moms
daughter
struggle with
mom. No, I'm
boundaries a lot
joking.
more than dad.
But I appreciate what you just said.
Yeah.
I feel like we do tend to romanticize these things. And I do think that in cases where like men and women have like that very close relationship, especially from that generation, there is a lot of codependency and a lot of the woman running the man's life, you know?
absolutely.
So I think this was a really interesting conversation, and I'm sorry we're going to have to cut it short now. I think we've run out of time. But thank
Lots
you.
more to talk about.
That's what I talk about. And I just really want to thank everyone for being so vulnerable and honest, because I feel like it's healing to like speak about these things. We don't really do that. And this is the first time we've all spoken about how we felt as being parented and as with our siblings. We've always spoken about our motherhood journey here, but we've never really spoken, all of us, in terms of our shared experiences. The
I
children.
think I have to say, Bakul, if you were not here, I wouldn't have been able to do it. You model it. You really model it.
Thank you.
On Instagram and otherwise. And it's very meaningful.
I don't want you or anyone to feel the pressure of giving words to their grief.
It
at
was
all,
not
because it's
pressure.
a-
In fact, it was, it came from the deepest core of my heart. And it's validating that there is someone who is, if I want to hear more of what she has to say, maybe she has a ear for me as well. And, which I often don't feel in most spaces.
Yeah.
So I think it was very, very helpful and very healing.
Thank you. And I think the glimmers of your life with your parents that you allowed us to see, I think made me feel so curious and so warm about all the stories you hold in your heart.
But I want to say that for both of you. I've not met either of your set of parents, but I do honestly feel like I kind of can get their essence just from the way the two of you talk about them, which is,
No,
and it's
but
all
thank
very
you
lovely.
guys. I know, I could see and I know that nothing about this conversation was easy, and you showed up with just kindness and the willingness to share. So thank you for that.
Thank
for
you.
actually making this space so warm and so easy.
And talking about how we parent ourselves
Oh
as
my
adults, which is the answer to what individuation is.
Yeah, now I know.
I just eat now. That's how I parent myself. I eat. Food is love.
Okay,
Thank you
for being
so
here.
much,
Thank
Bakul,
you.
and thank you for being you.
Yes.